That look in the arena changed everything. I'm Harrison Bennett, 38 years old, a professional bullfighter in Madrid for over a decade. My life has always been built on discipline. Every move, every gesture, meticulously calculated. Tradition runs in my veins as an inheritance from generations of toreros. My apartment in the historic center of Madrid reflects that same precision. Everything in its proper place, every object telling a story of triumphs in the arena. The medals and trophies on the walls stand as silent witnesses to a career built on family expectations and the applause of the crowd. But that afternoon, when our paths crossed in Las Ventas, I realized that no amount of control in the world could have prepared me for what was coming. Fate has a peculiar knack for jumbling our certainties when we least expect it. And that's how my perfectly planned story started taking a completely different turn. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. Las Ventas is my second home. The imposing arena holds stories in every grain of sand, in every century-old grandstand. My days begin before the sun, with the meticulous ritual of dressing in the traje de luces. Every golden button, every embroidered detail tells a story of honor and tradition. The scent of leather mixed with warm sand follows me through my morning training sessions. The echo of my footsteps in the empty arena has always been my favorite music. Until then, that routine was my safe haven. Train, perfect every move, and maintain the precision that the art of bullfighting demands. It was during the international festival that my perfect routine fell apart. I was adjusting my cape when he walked into the arena. Logan Parker, a Mexican-American cowboy who had come to showcase rodeo techniques. Tall, sun-bronzed skin, and confident movements that spoke of years of experience with wild horses. Unlike the studied elegance I had always cultivated, Logan exuded a natural, almost primal confidence. His cowboy hat contrasted with my traditional costume, just as his carefree smile clashed with my usual seriousness. He came up to discuss the event's schedule. "Interesting how you bullfighters make everything seem so formal," he said, with an accent that mixed Spanish and English. His comment came off as a veiled provocation. I felt my pride get wounded and replied with the typical hauteur of my profession. "Every move here carries centuries of tradition." Logan just smiled, skillfully twirling his rope. "Tradition is important. But sometimes we need to break a few rules to evolve." His brown eyes locked with mine for one long, challenging moment. During his demonstration, I couldn't help but notice how he owned the space. His moves were precise, but had a freedom I'd never allowed myself. The crowd cheered enthusiastically, and for the first time in years, I found myself questioning my own rigidity. After his presentation, he passed by me at the exit of the arena. "Maybe I can teach you some different techniques," he suggested with a half smile. "And maybe I can show you the value of discipline," I shot back, trying to keep my usual composure. That encounter left an unease I couldn't quite name. It was as if Logan had thrown everything I'd built into disarray, just with his presence and a few words. The arena, which had always been my place of absolute control, now felt charged with a different energy. For the first time, the century-old walls of Las Ventas witnessed my focus scatter onto something beyond the techniques of toreo. In the following days, Logan and I started swapping experiences in the arena. He showed me how to use the lasso while I explained the movements with the muleta. Our training sessions stretched until sunset, and every day brought a new discovery. Between demonstrations, we talked about our very different lives. He told me about the vast plains of Texas, nights spent under the stars during rodeos, and the freedom of life on the road. I shared stories of grand runs, Spanish traditions, and the weight of carrying a family legacy. "Have you always been so by the book?" he asked one time, while teaching me how to tie a specific knot. His touch as he corrected the positioning of my hands sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. "Perfection is a requirement of my art," I answered, trying to keep my focus on the lasso. Slowly, I realized that Logan had a unique way of breaking down my barriers. When we'd have dinner together after training, he made me laugh with his rodeo adventure stories. His laugh was infectious, and his carefree attitude began to affect my own posture. "You know what your problem is, Harrison? You overthink everything," he remarked during one of our dinners. "And you underthink," I countered, unable to hold back a smile. Our dynamic was a constant game of teasing and discoveries. Each day, a new layer of closeness settled between us. It was impossible not to notice how his eyes sparkled when he managed to make me relax, or how his smile widened when I nailed a move he had taught me. It was during these interactions that I began to notice a subtle change in myself. The rigidity that had always defined me started to give way, like a knot slowly untangling. but I still wasn't ready to admit what that meant. The closeness with Logan began to spark questions I had always avoided. At night, alone in my apartment, I found myself replaying every moment, every exchanged look in the arena. The mirror reflected a different Harrison, someone I no longer fully recognized. The other bullfighters' comments didn't help. Their disapproving looks when they saw me training with Logan felt like stabs in my professional pride. "A Bennett shouldn't mix with rodeo techniques," I heard one of the veterans say. The pressure of family tradition grew heavier with each passing day. I tried to pull away, diving even deeper into the traditional training. But Logan had a knack for showing up at the moments when my resistance was at its lowest. "You don't have to carry the whole world on your shoulders," he said one day with that disarming simplicity. The truth is, I was at war with myself. Every smile he drew from me felt like a small betrayal to everything I had built. My heart raced in his presence, and that scared me more than any bull I had ever faced in the arena. It was during an evening training session that everything changed. The arena was empty, except for the two of us. Logan insisted on teaching me a specific lasso technique that required physical closeness. The setting sun painted Las Ventas in golden hues, creating an almost unreal atmosphere. "Relax your shoulders," he murmured, positioning himself behind me. His firm hands adjusted my stance, and every touch left a trail of electricity on my skin. The mix of leather and wood that emanated from him blended with the familiar smell of the arena, creating an intoxicating combination. "You're trying to control too much," he whispered close to my ear, his fingers gliding down my arms until they reached my hands holding the rope. "Sometimes you just need to let it flow." His body was so close I could feel the heat radiating through our clothes. I tried to focus on the movement of the lasso, but my mind was in turmoil. Every breath he took against my neck sent shivers down my spine. The world beyond the arena ceased to exist. There was no more tradition, no more expectations or judgments, just the two of us, in that suspended moment in time. "Harrison," his voice came out huskily as his hands left the rope and rested on my waist. I slowly turned around, meeting his intense gaze. The tension between us was palpable, electric, like the air before a storm. The lasso dropped, forgotten in the sand. My hands, always so steady with the muleta, now trembled slightly as they touched his face. Logan stayed still, giving me space to explore this uncharted territory at my own pace. His eyes, usually playful, were dark with desire. "You don't have to be afraid," he murmured, his hand rising to caress my neck. The touch was gentle yet firm, just like everything about him. "I'm not afraid," I replied, my voice lower than a whisper, even though I knew it was only half true. The first touch of our lips was soft, tentative. Soon it deepened into something more intense, more urgent. My hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing just as fast as mine. His fingers dug into my hair, unraveling the always immaculate style. The kiss tasted like freedom. The freedom he had always represented and that I'd always denied myself. It was as if every barrier I had built over the years was crumbling with every movement of his lips against mine. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, the sun had already set. The arena was bathed in twilight, yet I'd never felt so exposed. Logan kept one hand on my neck, his forehead pressed against mine, our bodies still close. "That changes everything," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "Only if you let it," he replied with that smile that had already become my downfall. The arena, which had witnessed so many battles, was now witnessing my biggest surrender. There, between the sand and the growing shadows, I realized that some battles are won precisely when we allow ourselves to lose. The moment intensified when Logan led me to the arena's private corridor. Darkness enveloped us, broken only by the diffuse light coming through the small windows. His lips met my neck, sparking sensations I'd never experienced before. My hands, so precise in the art of bullfighting, were now exploring his body with urgency. Every undone button of his shirt revealed more of his bronzed skin. The contrast between his warmth and the cold wall behind me only amplified the intensity of the moment. "Let me show you what it's like to lose control," he whispered, his strong hands sliding over my body with a mix of firmness and tenderness. Like an experienced trainer, he knew exactly how to guide me, how to awaken sensations I never knew existed. The meeting of our bodies was like a primal dance, an ancient ritual that transcended cultures and traditions. Every touch, every sigh, every movement pulled us deeper into this mutual exploration. The outside world ceased to exist. It was just the two of us, lost in a whirlwind of sensations. Logan had a gift for making me feel completely exposed, yet safe at the same time. His hands roamed my body as if memorizing every detail, every reaction. When we finally became one, it felt like something inside me broke and then rebuilt itself all at once. The pace gradually quickened, like a song that builds in intensity. My fingers dug into his broad shoulders, seeking anchorage as the pleasure rose in ever stronger waves. His kisses muffled my moans, turning them into broken sighs. At that moment, the disciplined bullfighter ceased to exist, leaving only a man surrendered to desire. Logan murmured sweet words in a mix of Spanish and English, his husky voice sending shivers down my spine. The climax hit us like a summer storm, intense, overwhelming, and inevitable. Afterward, as we caught our breath with his body still close to mine, I realized something fundamental had changed. The pursuit of perfection that had always guided my life now felt so distant. There in Logan's arms, I discovered a different form of perfection, one that didn't demand rules or tradition. The minutes that followed our encounter were filled with a silence heavy with meaning. Logan adjusted his clothes with calm movements while I tried to process the intensity of what had happened. The corridor, once a witness to our passion, now seemed different, as if it were guarding a precious secret. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice still husky as he moved closer to fix my disheveled hair. That simple gesture carried an intimacy that made me shiver. I nodded, unable to form words that could do justice to the whirlwind of emotions in my chest. We left the arena together, with Madrid's night welcoming us with its warm breeze. The old street seemed to conspire to prolong the moment, stretching out the walk to my apartment. Logan kept a respectful closeness, but his looks said everything his words did not. At home, in front of the bathroom mirror, I examined the subtle marks his hands and lips had left on my skin. Each one was proof that I hadn't imagined that night, that I had truly allowed myself to be honest for the first time in years. The next day brought a new perspective. In the arena, every move felt different. The rigidity that had always characterized my technique had given way to a fluidity I'd never experienced before. It was as if my encounter with Logan had unlocked something in me, a more authentic expression of who I really was. We met again during training. The air between us was charged with a different kind of tension, a newly discovered familiarity that made every look more meaningful. "You're different today," he observed during a break, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Maybe I've learned to let go a little," I replied, letting a smile slip out. His low laugh warmed something inside me. The way he looked at me now was even more intense, as if he had discovered a hidden treasure he intended to protect. As the days passed, I realized that our connection went beyond the physical. Our conversations became deeper, more honest. Logan made me question beliefs I'd held all my life, not to destroy them, but to understand why I'd held on to them. The arena, once my haven of discipline and tradition, transformed into a space of discovery and liberation. Every moment shared with Logan added a new layer to my understanding of who I could be, beyond the expectations and roles I'd always played. It was as if that intimate encounter had opened a door I didn't even know existed. A door to a world where perfection wasn't about flawlessly executed rehearsed moves, but about having the courage to be vulnerable, to feel, to accept that not everything needs to follow a predetermined script. The transformation was subtle, but profound. Like a dance that starts slowly and grows in complexity, my life was being redrawn in a new rhythm, one that included the possibility of love, of surprise, of a welcome imperfection. The international festival was coming to an end, and with it, the inevitable conversation about the future hung in the air. Logan found me in the arena after his last show, the sun setting for the last time over us in that space that had become so special. "I have shows lined up in Texas next month," he said, his fingers interlaced with mine in a familiarity that made my heart squeeze. I felt the weight of those words, the reality of our very different lives finally catching up with us. "And I have an entire season ahead here in Madrid," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The ensuing silence was heavy with unspoken possibilities. Logan pulled me closer, his familiar scent enveloping me. "You know, Harrison, there are flights between Madrid and Texas," he murmured against my hair. "And there are several arenas in the United States that would love to have a bullfighter of your caliber doing special performances." The suggestion made my heart race. It was true. I could do international shows, something I had always avoided because I was chained to my family tradition. "And maybe you could spend some seasons here," I suggested, allowing myself to dream of possibilities. "Exactly," he smiled, that smile that had the power to unravel all my inner knots. "It doesn't have to be goodbye. It can just be a see you later." I thought about all the changes that had taken place in my life since Logan appeared. How my worldview, once so confined by rules and expectations, had expanded. How I learned that there are different ways to honor tradition without being a prisoner to it. I've never been good at long-distance relationships, I confessed, exposing a fear I didn't even know I had. Logan cupped my face in his hands, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that left me defenseless. "You've also never been good at losing control, and look where we are," he teased, drawing a reluctant smile from me. "Some things are worth the effort, don't you think?" There, under the darkening Madrid sky, we made plans. They weren't grand promises or lifelong declarations. They were possibilities, openings, chances to build something unique, something just ours. We exchanged numbers, dates, ideas on when and where we might meet up again. "I'll send you videos of my shows," he promised, pulling me in for one last kiss in the arena. "And I expect to get photos of you in that suit that makes you look so elegant." "I'm gonna miss the way you turn my life upside down," I admitted, letting the vulnerability seep into my voice. Logan laughed, that laugh that had already become my favorite sound. "And I'll miss teaching you how to live a little, Senor Bennett." When we said goodbye at the door of the arena, there wasn't any sadness, just anticipation, as if we were at the beginning of something, not the end. Logan mounted his horse, the figure of the typical American cowboy who had turned my world upside down. "Hasta pronto, mi amor," he said, tipping his hat in a characteristic gesture before riding off. I watched him go, feeling not emptiness, but completeness. Some people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to show us new horizons, and Logan had done just that. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. Today, as I look at the empty arena of Las Ventas, I realize how a single encounter can completely change our story. The marks in the sand remind me of the moments with Logan, of stolen kisses, of lessons about freedom and authenticity. My art in bullfighting has taken on a new dimension. The rigidity that once defined me has given way to a more fluid, more genuine expression. The spectators notice. People say they've never seen me dance so gracefully in the arena. Little do they know that I learned that dance in the arms of a cowboy. Next week, I'm going to do my first international show in Texas. Logan will be there, with that smile that still makes my heart skip a beat. Our lives may be separated by an ocean, but they're connected by something stronger than distance. I learned that some traditions can be honored in different ways. That being true to who we really are doesn't mean betraying our roots. It means letting them grow in new directions. Love, when it's real, doesn't tie us down. It frees us to be the best version of ourselves. The arena remains my home, but now it holds memories that go far beyond bullfighting. Every sunset reminds me of that special afternoon. Every breeze carries the echo of his words. Every silent moment guards the secret of our encounters. If you've ever felt your world turn upside down because of an unexpected meeting, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more stories about love, tradition, and the courage to be who we really are. As Logan always says, sometimes you have to get lost to find yourself. And me? I got lost in the eyes of a cowboy to discover my true essence. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this.